Hello and welcome to First Contact, the world's first podcast where we openly discuss all things relating to humanity's preparation for open contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. I'm your host, Eesha Patel. If you are loving this content, please be sure to join us in the First Contact Facebook community and let us know what you think. Let's dive into another exciting episode of First Contact. Hey everyone, and welcome to First Contact. Today we have a very, very special guest. His name is Thomas Carey. Thomas Carey is one of the leading researchers behind the Roswell case. He has spent the last 32 years interviewing over 600 first and second-hand witnesses, and today he'll be with us sharing just a little bit about what he knows. So thank you, Tom, for being here today. Let's just get straight into it. I'm really curious as to what you know. I am looking forward to having this conversation.
Okay.
I saw that you're speaking at the Philadelphia conference as well. So I was just chatting with Jesse in the DMs earlier. And I thought, oh, your name's on there too. So I thought, oh, how cool is that?
Yes, it's Jesse Peak, and it's May 20th, if I recall.
Yeah, it's an in-person event though, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to be there.
I'm the last speaker. I'm at 8:15, and I learned, all my presentations, I learned never to be the speaker before lunch and never be the speaker before dinner.
Right.
But this will be something new, but I'm looking forward to it.
That sounds really cool. I only just met him recently, just online actually, and I saw it was happening in Philadelphia because I spoke with Eric Mintle recently too. So it seems that there's a bit of activity happening in that area.
Have you met Eric?
Yeah, I interviewed him, I think week before last.
Yes, we're working on a few cases together, not UFOs, but cryptids. We're working on a cryptid case or two.
What's that?
That's a cryptid is a unrecognized animal life.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like like Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in this case, it's not Bigfoot, which I thought it was at first, but it's what they call the dog man. It's a dog man case.
He did mention that actually when I was chatting with him. He said that there was something seen in the forest and he reckons it could be related to UFOs somehow, which I thought was interesting, but
yes,
I'm not really sure.
Some of the cases are the witnesses claim to have seen creatures coming out and going into UFOs and all that sort of stuff. But this particular case is a ground-dwelling cryptid that we think, according to the witnesses' testimonies, there's a number of witnesses that it may be interdimensional. That's what it looks like. It will appear and then disappear. And then it'll appear over here and disappear, as if it's trying to find the right portal to go through. That's what they describe, and I'm new at the cryptid. I'm new at cryptids, so I'm learning as well. But that's what it appears to be.
And when you say interdimensional, what do you mean by that?
That it can be physical and non-physical, and some other, and that there would be like a portal, whether it's in the future, in the past, somewhere else, that it's going through periodically, because these cases, the one that I'm working on, have taken place over many, many years. It's not just recently, but it's been sightings for many years. And according to the witnesses that I've spoken to, the dog man, if that's what it is, and that's what it sounds like, it will appear, come right up to them, and then just disappear, just blink out. So that's to me, that's some, and I'm no expert at this, explaining these things, but that sounds like something like that, because you have a number of UFO cases where they appear and disappear like instantaneously. They'll appear all of a sudden and then they'll just disappear, not fly away, but just disappear into thin air. So to me, that's dimensional or time traveling something. I don't. It's way above my pay grade, as someone once said. But I'm still investigating this particular case. But that's what it looks like.
Yeah, wow. There's certainly a lot of very strange things out there. I mean, yeah, in the journey of me doing these interviews, I started off with just UFOs. I thought, okay, let's just get this one topic nailed. And it's something I have direct experience with. So I've met interdimensional beings. I have a lot of experience with the whole multidimensional realm. But it was very interesting when I started interviewing people about UFOs that time travel just kept coming up. It's like I can't get away from it, and it wasn't a topic that I actually set out to explore at all. In fact, I time travel to me was somewhere in the conspiracy theory bucket, and I'm pretty open-minded. So for me to put something in the conspiracy theory bucket means it's really.
I never thought of it before either. I never thought of it before, except on my Roswell investigation, which now is, let's see, I started 1991, so 9101 is that 32 years worth of Roswell. I never thought I would be on it that long, but several of the high-ranking people who analyzed the wreckage and the bodies after the crash was recovered later on said that they were. One of them said that it was not that it was interdimensional. Talking about the Roswell case now. One of them said it was interdimensional. The other one said it was extra-temporal, meaning time travelers. And I had never considered anything like that, because we had physical wreckage and bodies and things like that, but they can apparently go in and out of like a physical state and then go into some other state. But that's what they said. These were not Uncle Joe down the street. These were high-ranking physicists and things like that, high-ranking officers. And so I have to put some credence to that.
Who was it that said that?
Who was it? One of them was one of the, you ever hear of Operation Paperclip?
It's come up, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah, that's after World War II was over, at least the European war. The race was on between the Western Allies and the Russians to capture as many as the German rocket scientists that were launching these V-2 rockets against England. The race was on to capture as many of those German rocket scientists as they could before the other power got a hold of them. And the Western Allies, they captured the head guy, Werner von Braun, who was in charge of the V-2 rocket program. And he was really into rocketry and space travel. He didn't like the use of rockets for war and things like that. So the Western Allies captured him, and he became, in the United States, the father of the American space program. And so people like that, he came over in Operation Paperclip. There were like, the first batch were 90 of these rocket scientists came over to the United States in 1945. And a number of them were involved in the Roswell recovery, the analysis, because they were ones that knew the most about rockets and space travel and all that sort of stuff. So it was only natural that they would become involved in the Roswell case, which they did. And so Werner von Braun himself made 2 public statements about Roswell, or about UFOs in general. He said, yes, there are UFOs, but they are more powerful, meaning the occupants, they are more powerful than we ever suspected they would be. Something like that, they were far ahead technology-wise. And he made 2 public statements like that. And he ended them by saying, well, that's all I can tell you at the moment, because he's working for the US government, and I'm sure they said don't say anything about it, And so so the another fellow who was working for von Braun, his name was Ernst Steinhoff, another rocket scientist, came over Operation Paperclip, and he became one of the US Air Force's go-to guys, somebody who was involved in not only Roswell research, but UFO research. And he's the one that said that Roswell was not extraterrestrial, it was extra-dimensional. That was Ernst Steinhoff. He's long dead now. And the other one, there was a second fellow. He was a naval commander, also on Werner von Braun's team. And he was interviewed by a fellow named William Burns, who lives about 20 minutes from me, from where I sit. And he interviewed this fellow. His name was Commander George Hoover. And he was on Werner von Braun's team. And this was shortly before he died, and before Hoover died. And he was actually interviewing him about something else, just UFOs in general, but they got around to Roswell. And he said, oh, Roswell wasn't extraterrestrial, it was extra-temporal, meaning time travelers. And he even went so far as to say they could be us from a future Earth. Now, to me, that's way over my head. That's way over my head. But that's what he said. And he was a high-ranking officer in the Navy, of all things. And that was his conclusion. So like I say, it's not Uncle Harry down at the bar talking over a beer. This are 2 high-ranking scientists who analyzed the wreckage and the bodies and the whole thing about Roswell and UFOs, and that was their conclusion.
Wow. It's actually interesting that you say that, because I've heard a very similar thing about the Rendlesham experience, which I'm still going deeper into. I feel like the more questions I ask, the bigger that rabbit hole gets. I will say it, from my understanding of what I know about UFOs and connecting with these beings, it does make sense that these encounters are more interdimensional than they are extraterrestrial. And I think it's important to define that a little bit as well, because I think there's people out there who think that if we go to Venus or Mars or some planet in a nearby solar system, that we will find human life, but it's very limited to a 3rd dimensional framework. And I personally don't believe that those beings exist in the 3D. I think any, extraterrestrial life exists as interdimensional consciousness that's able to visit through whatever technologies that they have. I mean, that's just my kind of hypothesis on this.
Well, I'm coming around to that. Believe it or not, I was strictly nuts and bolts, physical craft. How do I pronounce your first name?
It's Eesha.
Eesha. I just lost my train of thought. Oh yes, the distance in space are so great. They have had the alien beings had to figure out some way to get here from there, which is so far away that by means of travel that we know now, which is like rockets and jet engines. You just can't do it. You can't. Somehow they had to shrink time and space. They had to shrink it somehow. And they've done it. Don't ask me how they did it, but they're able to shrink time and space so it's just that it's a short jump for them to get from there to here. And that's the interdimensional thing. And they're perhaps the Earth. I always go by the round numbers of the universe was created 15 billion years ago. No, yes, 15 billion years ago. Our solar system 10 billion years ago, and the Earth 5 billion years ago. So we don't start getting life on Earth until about 300 million years ago. Well, what's to say that there's another civilization that's way older than that? Maybe a billion years old or something from another solar system in our Milky Way galaxy or from another galaxy. Whatever it is, they've been able to learn how to shrink time and space. And if there are a million years, I mean, look at us now. We've been to the moon. We've sent rockets to Mars and the other planets. Not all of them with people on them, but that's only since the early 1900s when we discovered how to fly. The Wright brothers was 1903. So that's a little over 1 century, 100 years. You're talking about somebody that might be a million years older than our civilization, right? Imagine the leaps and bounds that they could make and the things that we're discovering now. When you look at it that way, that makes sense to me, because there's like 100 billion galaxies out there, billions of them with the planets, and they estimate that in the universe, well, even in just the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy, there's a billion other Earths out there. Another billion Earths, very similar to ours. And the universe, it's made up of all the same elements. When the Big Bang occurred, it's all the same elements. So that doesn't mean they all went through a dinosaur stage or something like that, but they all evolved from the same building blocks of life. They had all the other Earths, or even the non-Earths out there, it's all made of the same building blocks. So that doesn't mean they all had to turn out to be us, but somebody like us, that can manipulate their environment. And that's the thing about human beings, is we can manipulate our environment. Where the chimpanzees, our closest living relative, can only do minimal things, like dig for ants in a log. That's oh, look, it's using a tool. Oh, it's got a little stem and it's digging for ants in a log. That's as far as it got. That's as far as chimpanzees got. So what we split off from chimpanzees are, again, our closest living animal relative, 6.7 million years ago. That's the latest data we have. 6.7 million years ago, us and the chimpanzees split. Chimpanzees remain chimpanzees. We went on a different track. Culture. We developed culture, and that's our big hallmark of humanity. While the chimpanzees are still trying to get termites out of logs, we've invented rockets.
I do wonder how true some aspects of that theory are. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole today, but from what I know about, extra-dimensional consciousness, I feel like putting human beings in the same bucket as chimpanzees, I feel like there's a missing link somewhere in there that people don't know about, because I think there is something to it.
There's no missing link. There's a common ancestor. Okay, my background is physical anthropology, and the missing link is something that somebody created, but the real term is the common ancestor that we had, and the common ancestor that, for the first one to split off, you were the orang, there's the lesser apes, which are the gibbons, like the gibbon, the tree swingers, gibbons. They're the farthest of the great ape line. Was the gibbons, then the orang, then the gorilla, then the chimpanzee is our closest living relative. We share 98% of our genetic material as a chimpanzee. It's that 2% that makes all the difference. And like I said, the common ancestor, commonly known as the missing link, we shared with the chimpanzee 6.7 million years ago. And this is from all the fossil material, and especially the genetic studies. The genetic, they study the various constituents in the DNA, and it all comes together about between 6 and 7 million years ago, that we shared a common ancestor with chimpanzees. And don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but that's what they say.
Well, if we stay on that thread a little bit, with the bodies that were found in Roswell, was there any genetic analysis done on that maybe somehow proved that they were not human, or that they came from some other source?
Could you repeat that? I missed the first part of it.
I was just asking if in the analysis of the bodies that were found at Roswell, I mean, you're talking about, genetics between chimpanzees and humans. What did they find in relation to that?
I am sure that there was. Unfortunately, that genetic studies that you're talking have not been shared with us. I'm sure they did them because the bodies were recovered ultimately to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, where they could back engineer. Do you know what I mean by back engineer?
Yeah.
The wreckage, they could back engineer the wreckage, and we do have reports on that. Now, as far as the bodies, they had a great aeromedical laboratory there, state of the art. And I'm positive that they did studies like you're suggesting on genetics and stuff like that. But, they did not, to look at them, you say, oh my goodness, sure, they had 2 arms and 2 legs and a head. The head was way oversized, shaped like a pear, like an inverted pear. So it would be hard to think that they were somehow genetically akin to us. But if you look at it, maybe they're us in the future, like 1 million years from now. Who knows? But the studies you're asking about, there's no doubt in my mind that they, investigated things like that. But they have not been made public.
So with the research that you've done, I mean, you've been researching Roswell quite extensively. What have you discovered in terms of what was found, and also the reasons for covering that up potentially?
What was found was not an intact, we believe it was a disc, a circular disc, but it blew up. It didn't crash. It blew up in the atmosphere. We believe from a lightning strike. If it was internal, like somebody pressed the wrong button, we don't know. But if it was external, it was most likely a lightning strike that blew up the outer shell. And when that happened, 2 of the bodies immediately were thrown out and fell to the ground and perished. That left 3 more inside that continued on in what we believe was like an inner cabin that withstood the explosion. It continued on for another 30 miles, came to rest near just north of Roswell, New Mexico. There were 3 beings in that inner cabin. Two of them perished when it crashed, but one was still alive. We call it the live one. How long it lived, we don't know, but it was still alive, and they recovered that to Wright-Patterson. Everything was taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, as far as the wreckage, we have a fellow who's been working with us for about 15 years, and his sole purpose, he lives in Florida, his sole purpose was to find out what happened to the wreckage. What became of the wreckage? Well, after it went to Wright-Patterson. Well, he first thing he did was he submitted a Freedom of Information Act request. Where'd the wreckage go? And what did you do with it? Well, first they said, oh, we don't know anything about that. We don't know what you're talking about. Well, he then did a Freedom of Information Act to the Defense Department in Washington, and he got these reports. He received these reports that they had within a year. Wright-Patterson, do you ever hear of Patel Memorial Institute? It's a big think tank, and it does a lot of analysis in Columbus, Ohio, just down the road from Dayton, Ohio, where Wright-Patterson is. And they were charged with trying to back engineer what we call the memory metal. You know what the memory, ever hear of the memory metal, where it, very thin, and you can wad it up in your hand, open it up, and it'll just open up and just sort of float there. Just sort of float there. But it's indestructible. You can't cut it, scratch it, deform it in any way. But that was part of the outer shell of the craft that blew up. So there were a number of reports, update reports from Battelle Memorial Institute to Wright-Patterson on the progress they were making on trying to back engineer this memory metal. Now, we have it from eyewitnesses that on this ship, there were no moving parts, no engine, no moving parts. So how did that thing fly? Most likely some sort of thought projection. We're guessing, that's a guess. But we got the update reports from Battelle. And it turns out, and we got this from the commanding officer of Wright-Patterson just a few years later. His name was Arthur Exon, commanding officer, general. He was a general. He said, the wreckage itself, the metallic parts were mostly titanium and one other element that he couldn't remember, but they were mostly made out of titanium and one other element that he couldn't remember. So Patel is trying to try all these other elements with titanium to make that memory metal. The best they could come up with was something that we call nitinol. You can buy it today. You can look it up online. It's spelled Nitinol, nitinol. And the Ni stands for nickel. That was the one that they came up with to meld with titanium. That was the best they could do. And it's just like the memory metal, except you can cut it and roll it up and all that stuff. It's used in the space program. It's used in medical applications. Lots of if you have eyeglasses, a lot of your air frames, your frames from your glasses that you can bend into it, that's nitinol. It goes back. It goes back to its original shape. The only difference is between that and the real stuff is that you can buy it by the roll, by the sheet, by the coil. So that's what happened to the wreckage. As far as the bodies, we have a secondhand account from there was a fellow in Columbus, Ohio, who had friends in the medical facility who told him what they did the autopsies at Wright Patterson, what their findings were. And again, I say, it had the large head. It had no nose, just two little holes in the front of the face, two little holes on the side of the head for your ear, where your ears were. And it had a very pointed chin like a pear. And it had 4 digits, not 5, but 4. And it was about 35 pounds, 3.5 to 4 feet tall, very frail, like like everything is done mentally. That's what it suggests. Very frail, long arms, 4 digits, probably 4 toes or no toes at all. We don't know. But the question is, okay, well, did they try to make mental contact with it? Well, we have 2 stories, one from a fireman who visited the crash site before the military got there. And his name was Dan Dwyer. All these people are dead now. I mean, they're all the first hand, they're all dead or deceased. I'm sorry, they're deceased. His name was Dan Dwyer. He got to the site where all of the little pieces of wreckage had come down, not the site where the inner cabin had wound up, but this is the first site. We call it the debris field site.
Mm.
And all little pieces about the size of your palm, a lot of memory metal and stuff like that. And so he's walking up to this inner cabin or escape capsule or some sort that went another 35 miles. And he says, oh my God, there's 2 dead beings there. He's focused on the 2 dead bodies, right? But off in his periphery, he sees something moving. There's something moving. And there's one of them, the one that survived the crash, or the one that survived the landing, walking around. Oh my goodness. What is that thing? Had a big head with pear shape. So we get this story from his family because we never did get to interview him. He was gone by the time we were on the case.
Mm.
And so his daughter, Frankie Dwyer, also known as Frankie Dwyer Rowe, her married name, she's gone now too. We were good friends with her. But she said that when he got home that night, what did you do today, Dad? You have a good day at work? He said, yeah, I saw a flying. I went up north and saw a wreckage of a flying saucer. Oh, you did? Oh, well, tell us about it. Well, he told them about the wreckage and all that sort of stuff. And well, were there any beings on it? Yes, there were a number. There were 3. Oh, wow, that's interesting. And there was one still alive. Still alive? What did it look like? Well, he never gave the description that I just gave you. He just said one phrase. They said, what did it look like? And he said, child of the earth. Child of the earth. Well, I don't know what that is. So I looked it up online, what the child of the earth was. And if you put it in your browser, you'll get a good picture of what it's like a large land scorpion or spider. And the reason they call it the child of the earth is that its head, it's got all these legs, like a scorpion and a land spider or something, but its head is pink and it's shaped like like I just described to you, but it has these markings on top of its head, dark lines on, like when a new infant is just born, the bones in the skull have not ossified, or they not connected, and where they haven't connected, there's dark lines, because they haven't fused yet. So there's dark lines, and that's why they call this bug also known as the potato bug or the Jerusalem cricket. That's the word I was looking for. I was looking for cricket and I couldn't come up with it, but because the top of its head, it has these dark lines, and that's why they call it the child of the earth. So, but in the Southwest, if you say that, they know what you're talking about. They're talking about this Jerusalem cricket. But that's what he said it looked like. Well, did you talk to it? Yes, we conversed. Oh, what did you say? Well, first of all, we didn't talk like we're talking now, where with using our mouth and our tongue and our lips, and we didn't talk that way. We talked to one another in our heads, like mental telepathy, we would call it, right?
Mm.
We talked to one another in our heads. Well, what did you talk about? Well, they didn't talk about the baseball game. He said that I was concerned for this creature's well-being, but the creature talked back to me and it said, "Don't worry about me. My comrades are dead. My ship is destroyed. There's nothing I can do, but I accept my fate. So don't worry about me." So this creature could read Dan Dwyer's thoughts and could know that Dwyer was concerned about it, and he was trying to put him at ease. Don't worry about me. I accept my fate. So that's one story about, basically that's all that his story was. The other one comes from a Lieutenant Colonel Marion Magruder. He was a Marine Corps pilot in the Pacific during World War II. And he was one of the officers chosen in the 1947-48 Air War College class. This is where they decide who's going to be the leaders of our new Air Force, or new, into the 21st century. Who are future leaders? And this Marion Magruder was chosen one of 90. He was one of 90 officers chosen. And the school was in Montgomery, Alabama, at a Air Force base, whose name I never can come up with when I'm trying to talk about the story. I always come up with a name after the show's over, but it's in Montgomery, Alabama, an Air Force base whose name I forget at the moment. But for 1 week they were flown. This is now April of 1948, or about 6 months after the crash. They're flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to ostensibly see how the base is run, so that when they become in charge of Air Force bases themselves, they'll know how to administer a base, how to run it. That's what they were for. But they wanted to get, the Air Force wanted to get their Maxwell Air Force Base. I just came up to Maxwell Air Force Base was the base in the Montgomery, Alabama. So they're up there in Wright-Patterson, and they're taken into this hangar, and they're looking. What are we doing in here? What are we doing in here? So they push out a large gurney, a cart, something, and it has all this strange metal on it, strange wreckage, and they say, "Okay, fellas, take a look at this stuff." So a number of them hadn't heard of the Roswell crash. Not everybody heard of the Roswell crash because it was only a 2-day story back 6 months earlier. So they're looking at this. What is this stuff? So hey, they said, "Hey, sir, what is this stuff? Where did you get it?" And they said, "We got it at the crash. We recovered it from a crash of a flying saucer, or flying disc, as they called them, last summer," which would have been the summer of 47. Oh, well, that's interesting. So before they could start saying, what is a flying saucer? As they say, okay, follow me, fellas. They go into a room that's got 4 walls, no windows, but it had one of those see-through mirrors where on the other side it's a mirror or something that who's in the other room can't see through, but you can see through the mirror. And there was the live one in the other room, the one that was still alive, right? Now, our source was the son of Marion Magruder, who died in 1997, but his source was his son. So we said, what did he say it looked like? And he said his father used one word to describe what it looked like: squiggly. Spelled Squiggly, squiggly. Now, to me, squiggly is like rubbery, it's like shiny, rubbery. That's how he described it, squiggly. Oh, well, what was it doing? Well, we know it wasn't, we don't know if it was doing the Macarena or the Charleston or push-ups or sit. We don't know. Most likely it was either just sitting or standing there, wondering what it was doing, probably sensing the people on the other side of the room, I would imagine. But this source of ours said his father immediately, he didn't talk with this being, but he got a mental connection right away. He got a mental connection with it, and he felt not terrible, but he felt sympathy for it. That was the sense that he had, he felt sympathy for it. And but they didn't talk. That he said all of a sudden I was overcome by great sympathy, and I sensed its human-like qualities rather than its alien-like qualities. And that's as far as his contact was. So that's all we know about what was said and things like that, because we don't know when it died, but we heard two sources said they killed it. They killed it. Now, that doesn't mean they strung it up and shot it or intentionally killed it. What happened, we understand, was that it died in one of the experiments that they were doing on it. Something went wrong and the thing perished. When that happened, we don't know. We think it might have been around 1952. We're not sure. But other than that, we have no further information on the being's mental makeup, its movements. We do have some information on its physical. It didn't have a heart. It had like fluid, not blood, but some sort of oily fluid instead of blood. And it didn't ingest food. It didn't eat food. Its mouth opened into just a cavity. That's all it was. It didn't lead to a stomach, and a gastrointestinal tract. Didn't have any of that. So we don't know what it ate, how it ate, or how it survived. That information has not come to us. So we have gotten essentially from the military or the government almost nothing. We've gotten this on our own from interviewing witnesses. Some of them are military, some are scientific. A lot of them are civilians who got to the crash site or new doctors and stuff like that. Our investigation, we have over 600 witnesses, Eesha, I'm sorry. I'll get it right one of these times. But we have over 600 first and second-hand witnesses. We've got the whole story. We've got witnesses all the way from the crash site to Wright-Patterson to where the stuff is today. And we think we've done a pretty good job on that. We probably know more about the case than who's ever in charge of it now. And so We also feel, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm still a little bit lost in the story of the fact that the being was alive. I mean, it brought some tears to my eyes as you were saying that, because it's so sad to me that as a human race, we're still not evolved enough to be able to welcome a being from another planet without subjugating them to, these
Well,
horrendous experiments.
this was the 1940s now. I think today it would be totally different.
Something, I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't be too different, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, I like to think that we're a little bit more evolved as a human race, that if this happened again, and I believe it has happened on more than one occasion, that we would treat them with a level of respect. I mean, like, I do connect with a lot of these types of beings, interdimensional beings in consciousness, and they are very much like us. And so hearing your story, for me, I mean, obviously the evidence side of it is quite phenomenal. But my immediate response was just sadness, like how sad for that being that it came to Earth and this was its final days. I mean,
Yes.
it's a being that is sentient, that has consciousness. And that's the treatment that we give it. I mean, it's appalling. I just want to apologize on behalf of the human race for the way that we're treating these beings. It's just not right.
Well, the way the government treats, and they still do, UFOs, they look at it as in the category of threats to national security. That's the way they're looking at this. Threats to national security. And back in 1947, Eesha, did I get that right?
You did.
Back in 1947, World War II was just over. And the Soviet Union was our new enemy. It was appearing to be. This is 1947. Our former ally was now our primary adversary. So things in this, at first they thought the vehicle, what had happened was something from the Soviet Union had crashed. That was their thought. So the first thing was they wanted to bring the German scientists in to make sure whether it was or was not a Soviet design. And they found out very shortly, because of the bodies, that they weren't human, because it wasn't Soviet. So, it's, oh boy, But even today, UFOs, the government, we finally got them to say, oh, we're still investigating, but it's all in the concept of threats to national security. And it's just not, they should be looking at, well, let's face it, they've been around, at least that we know, since 1947. They haven't demonstrated anything that I can see of a hostile nature. I mean, it seems to me that if you can get from there to here, you can more or less do anything you want. They haven't done anything, as far as.
This is the thing. A lot of people ask the question, well, if they can, why don't they just show themselves? And sometimes I just say, well, guys, look at us as a human race. I mean, like, if you were a being on another planet or interdimensional, and you had the capacity to do all these things, why would you come to a planet where people are still killing each other and can't even live in harmony with the planet? I mean, let's face it, like, if I was in ET on another dimension or another planet, Earth would be the last place that I would come, So, people are like, well, why don't they just come? Well, there are some beings that are actually here to help us if we actually listen. But yeah, I mean, the way that we treat even ourselves as a human race doesn't exactly warrant a big influx of tourism from the intergalactic space.
Ever since we became human, about a little over 2 million years ago, according to the fossil record, we've lived in small clans, all fighting for the same natural resources. So things were always, the universe of a human being back then was the clan. And I use that term. I don't mean like the Scottish clans, but your universe was small, and you're all fighting for the same turf. And so that's ingrained in humans, is the survival,
but territorial nature, right? Like wanting to protect that which is ours, and we do it with everything. I mean, we do it with property, we do it with resources, we do it with everything.
And everybody is ethnocentric. You identify with your clan or your group. That's a better word, group. With your group, everybody's ethnocentric. It's at least 2 million years worth, and through evolution, that things become codified in your DNA, the way you behave, who survives, who doesn't survive, and things like that. I don't want to get down in the weeds on that, but that's the way I look at it. And who knows, whether these things are some sort of human projection, or maybe it's a totally different form of life, maybe a very evolved insect. The head is insect shaped. Maybe it's some sort of, because we don't know. Well, I don't know. The people at Wright-Patterson know, or used to know, but maybe it's not a vertebrate at all. A mammal, a reptile, could be evolved reptile. Some of them have some witnesses have described certain beings as reptilian. I'm thinking, wow. So I don't know. I really don't know, because there's many possibilities. But as far as human beings here on Earth, our nature is, for self-preservation and to survive, and whatever that takes. The farther back you go, everybody was, they carried spears and stuff like that. Today, it's I don't know what you call it, but the fight or flight, ethnocentrism, that's all still ingrained in us. And it seems to me that societies try to temper those as best they can, and it's very difficult.
I think, coming back to, I guess, the $1 million question, which is, are we alone in the universe, and what else is out there? I think from all the conversations that I've had so far, we keep landing on this idea that there's definitely something out there. I think that's without question.
Oh, no doubt about it. There's
no
doubt about it.
The nature of what's out there isn't necessarily in the same third dimensional physicality, the way that people like to think.
Maybe some other combination of elements and found a way. Maybe some other, found a way. It's entirely possible. And like I mentioned, maybe it's 1 million, 2 million, 5 million years older than us. Who knows what they evolved into? Here on Earth, we had, certain things happened in climate. The planet was frozen at some time, like a ball of a snowball, and then you had during the age of dinosaurs, something, you got a radiation of reptiles, and then a comet or something like that, it crashes into the Earth and wipes her. That doesn't mean every other planet went through those stages. Maybe they didn't have a comet wipe out all the dinosaurs, and they're still left. It's a lot of it is pure chance. And how the elements combine with whatever the local habitat is. So that's the best I can do on that. Eesha, I'm sorry. But I think there are many possibilities, but there's no doubt that there are Well, you ever hear of Carl Sagan, the astronomer? He said one of his proclamations was, and he was no UFO buff, he was no UFO guy. He said he believed that there were at least 1 million evolved intelligences in the Milky Way galaxy alone. 1 million in the Milky Way galaxy. That's evolved intelligences. Whatever they're made of, they became sentient or evolved mentally. And the Milky Way is just one of a billion galaxies. There's billions of Earths out there, or Earth-like, because the consensus is for life you need water. You need water and I guess a certain degree of the temperature. They call it the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold. So, and plus you need water. So that's what the experts say. So who can tell what they might look like, but somebody. Oh, but the big divide comes because all the scientists, most of them agree to that. But where the great divide comes is that I believe we've been visited by somebody from out there somewhere. I believe we've been visited where your scientists with reputations to protect don't believe that. Oh, no, we've never been visited. I believe we have. Certainly in 1947, there's no doubt in my mind that one of their ships blew up and crashed.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your research here with us today. I mean, it's really blown my mind. Every single conversation that I have, just adds another piece of that jigsaw puzzle. And I really wish, that we could go and talk to these people ourselves. Unfortunately, they're no longer with us.
In your heads.
That I do. Yes.
Where, if I might ask, where are you located?
I'm in Perth, Australia at the moment.
In where?
Perth, Australia.
Oh my goodness. I think I've done a interview or two, and I was not there, but by Skype or Zoom, and the farthest one I ever did was to New Zealand. Somebody in New Zealand, but it's I didn't know where you were, but I knew you had you weren't from the United States. You talked a little differently. Has a very nice accent.
Gives it away. Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I hope to get to Australia someday.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We actually have a lot of activity here, especially in Perth, in the Perth Hills. Get a lot of UFO sightings.
Perth is in the western part, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you have Melbourne and Canberra and Sydney, and what else? What am I leaving out? Well, they're on the eastern coast. Yeah. Perth is all by itself, I believe, on the western end.
Yes, we are. Maybe that's why they visit us more often.
Yes. Well, you're coming in clear. This is amazing. It's just like talking to you in the same room.
Yeah, I know, right? Technology, you gotta love it.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So what is your thought about Roswell, or do you just or do you consider that just part of your UFO knowledge?
I know a lot of things that I don't know whether to share or not.
Right.
Yeah, so Roswell definitely was ET. I mean, I have direct connection with the beings myself. I went through a big period of awakening almost a decade ago.
Oh,
and so I mean, I know they exist. I talk to them all the time. It's telepathic communication.
So you know that, I mean, you don't have to,
yeah. I'm not creating this series for myself, but well, actually, that's not true. I am hugely interested in the topic, and just being able to have these conversations one-on-one has been very, I feel blessed to be able to do it. I'm on the front lines at the moment with the research, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, you can read it from a book, you can go on the internet, but to actually hear it from the people themselves, it's a whole other ball game. And you get the transmission as well. I mean, I read energies, so I feel the transmission. So when you're talking about the being on the ship, I'm there, I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. Like I'm actually having a very visceral experience, hence the emotional experience of that for me, because it's very, very tangible in my reality. And I discovered multidimensional travel a little over 10 years ago now, I would say. So
Wow.
I figured out how to do it through consciousness and meditation.
Wow.
I discovered how to activate my light body, and I actually have visited some of these beings on their planets, you know. So I know
Good.
when you say, you know, oh, they're interdimensional, I'm like, I know that as a very first-hand experience.
Because I usually tread lightly when I bring up the interdimensional thing, because it's only a recent revelation to me, because our mandate for Roswell was to try to find every last witness that we could that was still alive. And they're all gone now, as far as we know. So we've written 12 books on the subject. And I never fancied myself as a writer, but somehow, if you're really interested in something, you can do it. You know, there's one Australian case that's right near the top. It's if I'm pronouncing it right, Westall. Westall case. One of the best ever.
Well, it was a multiple witness case, and they actually got the kids to come back as adults and again share their stories. And
that's a great case. That's a great case. So I'm happy to have I didn't know you were from Australia at first, but because it's like just you're in the next room here. So well, I've enjoyed it, and I hope I didn't get too far down into the weeds, but because when I get talking about Roswell, I get all revved up, you know. And
this is good. This is what we want. I want the details. I want the evidence. You know, I mean, like I said, I'm not the one who needs convincing. I'm very certain that we have been visited by intelligent life. I mean, I've had experiences myself. I've seen the ships. I've had beams of light come down from the sky. I have a lot of very tangible experience. I've taken photographs. I actually sent some of my photographs recently to a guy, Jason Gleaves. I believe he's actually, no, I can't remember if he's in the States or in Great Britain somewhere, but I had a conversation with him recently as well. We're also going to be airing his interview, and he analyzes photographs as just something that he does. And so I have these years and years of photographs. So I just picked a very small handful of them. I didn't send him all the hundreds of pictures that I have. I just picked a few. And I said, you know, what do you think? And he did his photographic analysis, and he, you know, changed the contrast and inverted the colors and did whatever he does. And he came back and said, there's some legitimate structures in there. You've actually, you know, you can see that there's some anomalies that are not explainable by, you know, everyday craft or things like birds, you know, bugs, things like that. So it's nice to get that verification as well. Not that I need it, because, you know, for me, I'm able to read the energy. So if a craft comes into my awareness, I can tell straight away where it's from. Is it Pleiadian? Is it Arcturian? Is it Sirian? Is it Andromedan? Who are they? How many people on board? What does it look like? Like I get the whole download pretty quickly. So to me, it's about expanding consciousness. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are still very much in the, you know, the nuts and bolts end of the spectrum. And so I try and cater to sort of both ends.
I don't have that ability. I don't have that ability you're talking. You know, that's something you're born with. And I don't know how many.
It's something that I have taught people. I mean, it's something that for the last 8 years, I have been actively able to teach people how to access this stuff. So I spent 8 years as a spiritual mentor, and I put all of my work in the guise of spirituality, because no one came after me from the scientific, you know, pitchforks. So I sat in the spiritual framework, but really what I was doing was teaching people how to connect with intelligent life. I mean, I've created a proven process now that I've been able to replicate with a number of my clients, who now are able to connect with these beings and also have the physical connections with the craft and things like that as well.
Has any government entity contacted you?
And I hope not. That's why I've been quietly sitting under spirituality for the last decade, because as long as I'm in the realm of spirituality, I can say whatever I like, because it's just like, you know, it's faith healing, or it's just like, you know, religious sort of stuff, and I can kind of get
Right.
away with it. So this is the first time I've kind of ventured out a little bit more into the science and academic space. I'm expecting, you know, a level of backlash from that, because as soon as you get into some of these more scientific communities, I mean, just to give you an example, I started putting some of my work on Reddit, and it was brutal, man. I don't think I'm going to go back on Reddit now because it's harsh, very harsh in
Wow.
there. Whereas when I sit in the realm of spirituality, I can talk about consciousness and I can still do the same work. I mean, I've been able to teach heaps of people how to connect. But yeah, last year I actually shut down my business and I just put all my videos on YouTube. So anyone who wants to learn how to do this stuff for themselves, literally just go to my YouTube channel. You can access this information. I mean, it's all there. It's for
Right.
free. You know, I used to charge a lot of money for it too. I mean, I had clients paying me big sums, you know, to learn the secrets of the universe.
Is this, I mean, is that your, do you have, do you have like a 9-to-5 job, or do you do this all the time?
This is my life. You know, someone recently said to me the phrase "employed by the universe." I feel like that's very fitting for myself, because money, you know, and this is something I used to teach a lot as well, this idea of abundance or providence, that when you're actually living your soul purpose, the money just shows up. And I'm in a beautiful position right now where the money is just showing up. I mean, I haven't worked in months. I haven't taken on any new clients. I shut down my business in December. And I'm like a walking miracle right now, in the sense that everything is just kind of flowing into where it needs to be. And all the doors that are opening for me right now are phenomenal. I mean, people who, you know, are wanting to talk to me, and they'll say, they're like, oh, I never get on interviews. I never talk to anyone. I only show up at, like, you know, conferences where there's 10 to 20,000 people. And
Wow.
I'm having one-on-ones with these people, like in my own study, you know? And so, yeah, blessed is an understatement. I really feel like I'm living this vibrational frequency where I feel so aligned and so on mission, because all I want to do, and all I've ever wanted for as long as I can remember, is to teach people that this magic exists and these beings exist, and people need to know about it. And the government, you know, and when I say the government, I mean multitude of organizations, government and non-governmental, are out there to stop people finding out this truth, because if everybody awakens, then they lose their power structures and their control. So there is an agenda behind not telling people, you know, that these things actually exist. Because can you imagine what would happen if everyone suddenly became, just say, telepathic, like just that one skill, if every single person
Right.
became telepathic, guess what would become redundant? We wouldn't need computers. I certainly wouldn't need to set Zoom meetings. You wouldn't need telephones. Like, think how many technologies would become redundant just by the introduction of telepathy. Then we move into the medical space. What would happen if the extraterrestrial light beds became a thing? Like, I've gone onto the starships and I've seen the healing technologies. Cancer, not a thing. So then you wouldn't have people constantly buying drugs every single week in order to, you know, keep themselves like healthy, or at least in a state where they can survive. And so, you know, there's a lot more to it. And reasons why I believe these truths behind consciousness are not being shared. And I feel very lucky that I discovered this stuff in my early 20s. You know, I mean, I just kind of stumbled upon it. I was meditating, I was activating my light body. Next thing you know, I'm traveling interdimensionally and meeting beings on starships and planets. And I thought I was going crazy for a long time. I really did, you know, but anyway, then I built a business around it. I've gone through a big journey with it, and sort of come full circle and just gone, you know what? At the moment, I'm not that interested in the business side of things. People still, they message me, they say, oh, can you help me with abundance stuff? At the moment, I don't really feel like coaching in that arena, but I can. Been there, done that, you know.
Right. Do you know Yvonne Smith? Yvonne Smith, she's in California.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of people, in a
Yeah.
similar sort of arena.
Yeah, she's a therapist, but for people who have UFO contacts. So she's a hypnotherapist. Yeah.
Mhm.
I will leave you with this. My favorite movie is On the Beach, which is set in Australia. And the reason I like the movie is because all through the movie, they play Waltzing Matilda.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And my favorite vocal group is the Seekers, who were from Australia, and I play all of their songs on my guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever hear you've heard of the Seekers?
No, actually I haven't.
Oh, they're
I know Waltzing Matilda. That's very famous.
yeah, but the Seekers, terrific group. They're no longer, because the lead singer passed away. But they were terrific. Let's see, there was 3 men and 1 woman, so it was 4 of them, and a lot of big hits. And I do all their songs on my guitar. So
Oh, nice.
yeah. So well, I hope I wasn't too well, because like I said, our mandate was to find to try to prove the case one way or the other, the Roswell, one way or the other, and it meant a lot of interviewing people and tracking them down, and we did it for 32 years now, and have written 12 books on the subject, and we are considered the top experts on the case. And it's only like in the last 3 years that because my co-author and we've never discussed where they might be from, why they're here, anything like that, because our activities were all, did you find this witness? Did you find that witness? But it's only in the last 3 years since I heard those 2 scientists say that it was not extraterrestrial, but extra-dimensional or extra-temporal. That got me thinking, okay, I better start thinking about this, because I never thought about those things before. But somehow they did get from there to here, and they can't do it with a rocket ship. They have to have had something else, most likely something that narrows space and time. And
well, I can give you a little lead on that one. So the way that it was described to me directly from them, what they actually do is it's a frequency match, right? So like the entire universe operates in bandwidths of frequencies, and Earth is sitting in a particular time fold which has a specific frequency. And so inside of that time fold, time appears as linear, but outside of that time fold, it's actually non-linear. And when I say non-linear, I mean that it's
going over my head.
Well, it's a bit multidimensional. In fact, the movie Interstellar, if you've ever seen that, the final
I did.
Where they have all the little boxes and you see everything happening at the same time.
Yes.
That's probably about the most accurate representation that I've seen of how it actually is. So good on whoever made that. They clearly were channeling something from somewhere and knew something. So yeah, so that film is a very accurate representation.
Yeah, it was Anne Hathaway and what was the male lead? I can't remember his name. I can see him, but I can't remember his name.
I'm hopeless at actors' names. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But yeah,
McConaughey or something like that.
Yeah.
But I did see the movie, yes, and
yeah,
it went over my.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people didn't understand it, whereas I looked at that final scene and went, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is on mainstream television or movies." I mean that just confirmed everything that I had already known about the universe, and to see it in front of me in visual form was incredible. It was like such a milestone for me to see that come out. Yeah. So with the spaceships or the craft. They do work through thought forms, and this is what they've said to me as well. So in the center of the craft, they've showed me that most craft will have some sort of core crystal or some sort of hologram, and it exists through that consciousness. And it is literally as simple as telepathically communicating to the core of that, and then maneuvering through the universe, which does beg the question of, well, then if that's the case, what led to it crashing in the first place? Because that in itself seems like a bit of an anomaly, because if it's operating through forms, was it intentional? Did something else go wrong? I mean, it opens up a lot more questions, but everything that you've said to me today and your accounts of, you know, the telepathy, it very much lines up with what I've already known and the experiences that I've had. So I certainly think, you know, the research is on the right track in terms of exploring the extratemporal and the interdimensional elements, because that is where it's at. And you know, people who are still wanting just nuts and bolts are going to be sorely disappointed when they realize they're going to have to get on board with consciousness, because that is the truth behind how and why these
we
things
started when we had a fella who worked in the hangar where all of the material was taken. He told us, and he said, look, he says, I'm old, and I want you fellas before I die to tell me what made that thing fly, because there wasn't a moving part on it. So immediately I'm thinking, there's got to be something up here that made it go. And what that was, I don't know, but he got us thinking about that, because there was not a moving part on it. You know, so, well, what time is it there now?
It's getting close to noon. Yeah.
It's 11:19 p.m. here.
Yeah, I'm exactly 12 hours in the future from you.
Well, listen, I've enjoyed it. I hope I, you know, gave you some things that were interesting, and you know, I'm still working on, like, I do have a new witness, a secondhand witness I'm working on now. Every time I think I'm done with the case, I have another witness, secondhand, of course, come along. So, and it's been 32 years now on this one case. So
it's quite the mission. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done.
Well, thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to First Contact. I'm your host Eesha Patel, and I'm so excited to have this conversation about open contact with extraterrestrial beings. Come join me in the Facebook community where you can continue the discussion, or keep listening for another episode of First Contact.